Cheers and welcome to Irondale Brewing. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail with the intro on this grain to glass video for the British Best Bitter because I kind of cover the style and so on in a segment in the brew day. But I'll just do a little bit of a brief intro and say this has been a style I've been wanting to brew for a while. The stars aligned in my brewing schedule such that it was a good time to do it. Finally made it happen. You have to see at the end if I'm pleased with the results or not. But just to give you a brief idea of the Best Bitter and kind of why I decided to brew it at this point in the year, and this is just reading from a quick AI-generated overview because that's the world we live in now. It's a moderately strong, flavorful, and refreshing English session ale that balances moderate to strong hop bitterness with malt notes like biscuit, caramel, and toast. Let's see, pale amber to copper color, low to moderate carbonation, slightly fruity, low hop aroma. It's kind of, from that description, sounds like it's not committing to anything, but that is definitely not the case, because as the name indicates, it's a bitter beer. But the main thing about that, and kind of what I want to point out in this intro, is it's supposed to be sessionable and very drinkable. So if you don't hit those marks with this, you've kind of missed the mark for the style. And I go over the recipe and everything in the brew day, so I think I'll leave it there for now, and you can kind of see how the brew day went. I tried to condense it down as much as I could and do a narration over it instead of making you watch every step of the way, which you can let me know what you think of that. I thought it worked pretty well to keep the brew day down to about 10 or so minutes instead of some of the longer ones I've done. And then at the end, we'll do a tasting and see if I hit the mark on this Best Bitter. All right, diving into the brew day here. For the grains, we're going with 88.4% crisp number 19 floor malted Maris Otter, 4.7% aromatic malt, 4.7% caramel and 20, and 2.3% special roast. For hops, it's all EKG. It's 60, 20, and 1 for about 30-ish IBU total with bulk at the beginning. And for yeast, we're using SO4, the old reliable English ale yeast. While I mill the grains, let's talk about the British bitter style and take a look at where the Best Bitter fits in. British bitter is actually a family of beers from the light, ordinary bitter all the way up to the more robust and complex extra special bitter, or ESB. And what all these variants have in common is that, as you might have guessed from the name, they're bitter. And by that, we're talking about an emphasis on hop bitterness, not hop flavor or aroma. So we'll have a pretty hefty bittering charge of hops at the beginning of the boil and much more moderate hop additions mid and late boil. And this is not American West Coast IPA bitterness we're talking about here, but these beers are notably bitter with an IBU range of 25 to as high as 50 in the ESB, but drinkability is a key component of all three of these beers. So they're going to have a good balance between the hops and the malt. And there's a lot of variation in the style that I won't get into, but you can, floral notes and fruity notes from yeast and so on can vary from low to high, depending on the style. So there's a lot of variation here. The beer we're focusing on today, the Best Bitter, sits right in the sweet spot between the ordinary bitter and the ESB. It has a little bit more malt flavor than an ordinary bitter without being as strong as an ESB, which to me gives you that ideal blend of rich malt, subtle fruit, and just the right amount of balancing bitterness. It's also intended to be sessionable with a more moderate ABV of under 5%, medium body, and a dry finish. All right, tools of the trade, and we're going to start mashing. I think the only reason I'm going to show this clip is because I set a strike temperature of 158. I am finding that setting a strike temperature above my mash temp is not working great for me. I just set it to the mash temp itself, get stuff mixed in, let it set for a while, stabilize, and that works a lot better for me. Otherwise, you got to wait too long for the temperature to drop. And here we are getting mashed in. It's a pretty moderate grain bill for a beer of this weight, so it's not nothing much of note here other than it smells fantastic. That crisp number 19 floor malted Maris Otter is fabulous. I'm pretty sure I've used that in one other batch. I'd have to look up where, but yeah, the aroma coming off the grains as I got them mashed in was absolutely fantastic. I think I do this every single video, but I wanted to get an action shot of we're about halfway through the mash, a little bit less, and the temperature has been 151, rock solid for most of this duration. And I just think the settings, I probably should do a separate video about it just to kind of duplicate what Kegland sent. These settings work great in my experience for keeping your mash temps steady. I think there's a bunch of different ways you can accomplish the same thing, but this works super well for me. I think the big revelation too for me was don't worry so much about the built-in. That's like, your fire, if you're thinking about propane, that is going to vary, more than you might think. But getting those two to match to me is not a big deal. The big thing is with the wrapped Bluetooth thermometer, and that being the primary driver of the temperature, as long as that, since that's in your mash, in the middle of your mash, stays where you want it, that's about the best you're going to hope for. So, you can see the built-in is ramping up a little bit. It's going up to 155. I don't care about that so much because that is a very limited scope of the water it's heating up. And again, if you want to change your temperature, you have to turn on the elements. That's going to make the water right around the elements go up, maybe higher than you would want. But if you want to, be able to change your temperature, that's what's going to happen. And keeping those two things, exactly the same to me is not an important thing. The main thing for me is I've only been, I haven't dropped below 151, and sometimes it's pushing more like 152, and I will take that because that is should result in a pretty darn good mash. The other thing I'm trying is I'm doing a little bit more vigorous. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, I don't want to take the lid off. Okay, so you can kind of see that. I wish this stayed in the middle better. I could probably figure out a clamp, but I have the pump wider open this time. I'm going to see what that does to my efficiency. My efficiency's dropped about 5% since I started using that thing versus just the hose and stirring every 15 minutes. The last few batches I've just done that Sergeant Sparge head, and I do not stir during the mash, and that dropped me from about 70, 72 to 65-ish. And I don't really care as long as that's stable and I know what I'm getting. That's the main thing. But anyway, a little bit of a mid-mash update. And once things reached a boil, we're going in with the first hop addition. In my case, that was 1.75 ounces of EKG. Just make sure it's about 25, a little over 25 IBU. It's going to vary depending on the alpha acids of your particular batch, so make sure and check that. You're shooting for, in my case, it came out to be 25.6 IBU for 1.75 ounces. And here we are with the second hop addition, which is much more moderate. This was for me, it was 0.42 ounces of EKG for about 3.6 IBU, just to get a little bit of that hop aroma going. That had a little bit of bitterness at 20 minutes, but not a lot. I don't always add yeast nutrient, but when I do, it's for no real reason other than it seemed like a good idea. I don't know that this batch would have needed it. We'll see with the fermentation progress that it did do very well. It was pretty aggressive for SO4. I don't know if the yeast nutrient was the determining factor there, but it certainly didn't hurt. And then about 5 minutes out, got to add that Whirlfloc, or in this case, Kick Carrageenan. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I find those little tablets handy just because you don't have to break a Whirlfloc tablet in half for a 5-gallon batch. They're pre-dosed. I think they're a little bit more expensive than Whirlfloc, but I've had good luck with them. So, you pay for convenience, but I find that is often worth it. And the final hop addition. The final hop addition is pretty large. In my case, it worked out to be 2.8 ounces of EKG. In terms of calculating how much you would need for the alpha acids of the hop that you get, this was for me 1.7 IBU. So again, you're going really for the IBU, but that's a way to measure kind of what your appropriate amount would be. For me, the alpha acids for this batch were 4.3%, and just putting it in at that 1 minute mark to get some nice aroma. It's not going to add much bitterness, but that hefty dose at the end, hoping to get some aroma out of that. And then we chill things down. This is sped up, obviously, but we're trying to get down to 68-ish, if I remember correctly, so that we have a good pitch temp. And usually for me, year-round, I can get things down to at least 68. If you try to go, we'll see in my next video, if you try to go much below that and it's warm out, it gets to be a little bit of a challenge. But Wort Chiller was doing its job nicely. I do Whirlpool while I'm chilling. That seems to help quite a bit. And also it does gets the benefit of having the proteins and whatever else you got floating around in there to coagulate, and in theory gives you a little bit clearer beer. And lastly, we get it transferred into the fermenter. And I have found I have multiple arms for my Brewzilla that have the right length of hose attached. So I have 3, the Whirlpool arm, and then the recirculation arm with 2 different lengths of hoses. That's handy not only for mashing, but then at the end of it, you can pop the sparge arm off and put the CIP ball in place, which I'll show in a future video, and that works really well. And as I said at the beginning, going in with SO4 for this batch. I haven't used SO4 in a little while. I always have good luck with it. No problem with that. I just haven't had made a beer in a while that was appropriate for that yeast, but it really did well for this batch. A little bit of a spoiler there. And then lastly, I think this is me. Oh yeah, the pill. Almost forgot the pill. And then lugging it off to the fermentation chamber. And here we are in the fermentation chamber. Not going to pressure ferment or anything, so I'll keep an eye on the spinning valve and keep it below 5. That tends to be what I consider to be no pressure, as long as it's below that. And for the original gravity, we got 1051. Shooting for 1047, but I'll take it. This is only about 48 hours post-pitch, and it is 95% done. You can see there's still a little bit of pressure on the spinning valve, but it's already started to settle down kind of substantially. I have kept it about 5 or so or under, essentially no pressure. I didn't want to pressure ferment, but just instead of using an airlock, but used my usual setup. Had a little bit of a leak early on in the fermentation in this area here. That is an ongoing issue for me. I threw out the second of the seals that I have tried. I have a whole sack of them, and this time it seemed to work. But initially, after you see it kick off and you aren't getting any pressure, that's always where this thing leaks for me. And I think it's a combination of seal and really cranking this thing down. I had it kind of tight to the point where you thought, well, it's all seated and that's holding it, but it wasn't quite doing the job. So anyway, after I got that resolved, it seemed to ferment out pretty quickly. SO4 usually has not performed this quickly for me, so I don't know if it's just happenstance, yeast nutrient, this particular batch, who knows. But anyway, that's where we're at a couple days in, and we'll keep an eye on it, see how it clears up over the rest of its fermentation. And here we have the best bitter fresh out of the keg. Again, if you were getting this traditional cask ale style in the UK, it would not look like this. Lower carbonation, would be served a little bit warmer. Sorry, I'm going to get some of the nucleation points off the side of the glass to make sure we can investigate it well. But this is, I think this beer works in this fashion as well with the traditional, serving temperature and carbonation of my kegerator. So let's just walk through the structured tasting here. See what we have in the aroma. Yeah, so that aroma is really nice. It's a great mix of a little bit of floral spicy from the East Kent Goldings hops, but the main thing is malty and yeasty. And when I say that, it's more like bread yeast, so bready, but not sulfury at all or anything like that. Yeah, just a really inviting, nice, a little bit sweet aroma to it. Just a little bit maybe of fruitiness, fruity esters from the SO4 yeast. Yeah, that's a really inviting aroma. So color-wise, it's supposed to be kind of amber copper range. I think this is a pretty darn good-looking beer. To me, it's looking pretty clear. I can see my hand through it, definitely. I did use silifine on this just because I'd never used that before and wanted to try it versus gelatin. Definitely easier to use. I think it probably works as well. I don't know. I'd have to do side by side to really know. But I think color-wise, that hits the marks for me. It's really a really good-looking beer, I think. All right, but all that aside, the real proof is in the taste. Wow. Yeah, that came out really well. As you see, I took a few gulps there. It's very easy to drink. You kind of want to just keep drinking it. So I hit the marks for the sessionability, drinkability, all that stuff. It finishes pretty dry, not super dry. Just it's pretty crisp on the finish, but not like biting like super dry beer. I think this one finished at. Let me look here. Apologies for not pulling this up ahead of time. Let's see what the actual batch numbers are on this. It's been in the keg for 17 days now. It finished down at 10:11. It looks like that's a not super dry, but dry, and that's kind of what you want for drinkability. At least for me, if something kind of hangs around on your palate after you take a drink, that makes me less likely to want to keep going. And it started at 10:51, so the ABV on this was, boy, I apologize for not pulling this up ahead of time, 5.1. So this is a little bit, I got a little bit better efficiency than I was shooting for on this, and a little bit higher starting gravity. So I was shooting for 4.6 ABV, this is 5.1. A little bit outside of the style, I think. It's slightly higher than you're supposed to go on this, but it does not taste alcohol-y, and to me, if you're staying around 5%, I'd still call that pretty sessionable versus a 7 or 8% IPA or something like that. So now the one thing I will say about the flavor that to me is interesting and is something to note, and I should probably try to get some best bitters, some commercial examples if I can. I think probably the ones that you can find most readily are probably London's Pride, I think is the best bitter from Fuller's. And I want to say Boddington's Pub Draft, I think is also considered a best bitter. And I think Goose Island Honker's Ale, I think maybe in that category as well, even though it's American. But so anyway, I'm just going to take another taste here so I can talk about the flavor component that to me is kind of interesting and I might want to play with a little bit. Yeah, so there is a kind of late in the in the finish, or as you're drinking, kind of as it goes through your palate, kind of towards the end before the actual finish, there is a tangy quality to its fruity tangy quality. It's not sour. I guess that's the best way I'd describe it is it's tangy, and that comes from. Let me go back to the recipe so we can go over that and keep things in context. So this is 88.4% Maris Otter, floor malted Maris Otter from Crisp, 4.7% aromatic malt, 4.7% caramel malt. Those are going to give you the aromatic malt and the caramel malt are going to give you that bready, kind of toasty. Caramel 120 is going to give you some dark fruit a little bit. And then the special roast is the thing I kind of want to focus on because special roast is an interesting grain, and in this case that might be something I'd play with a little bit because I thought I had the description of the grain pulled up. I'll try to keep talking while I find that, but that might be something I want to play with because for me that tangy quality in the finish is maybe just a little bit too much, and I'm being nitpicky here as I usually am. Like I think my next video on the Oktoberfest I'm probably going to be pretty picky because that brew day was, I won't say a disaster. I had a lot of issues using the steam hood for the first time, just in terms of boil off, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we'll get to that eventually. But in this case, I'm being pretty nitpicky because I am always thinking about kind of like what would I do differently next time? I mean, this is a great beer. I don't think it's going to last long. But for me, that tangy component is maybe a little bit intense. And that's why I'm saying I want to get some, commercial examples if I can. And there's a wide variation in this style. You can do a lot with it. And so that may or may not tell me much. I would just be curious if something like a London's Pride has that same level of the tangy from the special roast that this does. But if there's one thing I would change, and I got this recipe, I think just out of Brewing Classic Styles probably, because when you're going to do this, that's as good a place as any to start, and then you can kind of see what you want to do differently with it. But I think that would be the one thing I'd change is probably dial that back a little bit. And if that's characteristic to the style, I don't dislike it. It's just it's kind of a little bit too elevated for what I would call like a really nice balanced beer with everything else. Yeah, but overall, I really think this came out well. I didn't talk about the head. It's got a nice, I'd say light tan. It's not quite white, but it's not very dark either. Head that sticks around. You can see the legs on the glass there. Yeah, so I think overall I'm really happy with this. I would just change that one thing about maybe dialing the aromatic malt back a little bit for my taste. But this is a really fantastic beer. I think this is a great kind of late summer, early fall time frame beer. If you're at all interested in the British styles, this is a great one to make. It's pretty easy. It's just one hop with 3 additions, and the grain bill's pretty moderate, and it's just a nice, easy one to make, not complex. Unlike, I got a pumpkin beer coming up, believe it or not. I'm going to make a pumpkin beer. That one's going to be weird, but it's going to be fun. So stay tuned for that one. But yeah, best bitter, I give this one a solid, I think probably a B plus or even an A. I think the thing I need to verify is the tang that I am tasting characteristic to the style, to the level that it came out in this beer, and I might just drop that a little bit next time. But this is one I will definitely make again. It is super easy drinking. The flavor is fantastic. The aroma is nice, a nice balance of hops and malt, and I am very pleased with it. So I think I'll leave it there. Cheers. Make yourself a best bitter or find one, because this is a great beer. If you haven't had one before, and I guess we'll see you in the next one, which will probably be either I'm going to start doing the experiment, the Brewtubers experiment beer tastings. I got to get going on those because we had a huge turnout this year. I think there's 12 beers, maybe even 13. So we'll do start going through those, the amber ale malt experiment, which will be really interesting because it's going to be great to try out all those different beers. And then I have an Oktoberfest video mostly done. I got to get the beer, kind of into the keg and taste it. And like I said, a lot of challenges on that one, so that'll be a fun one to watch. There's one key part that I wish I had on video that I didn't get on video that I'll talk about in that. And that's about it for now. So cheers. I'm going to go finish this because it is a lovely beer.